How do you start to walk back the fear of I am going to be fired that is causing you to drive yourself into the ground, work way more hours than what is actually sustainable, and basically live in a perpetual state of panic about your job? My name is Brittany. I've been helping burnt out overachievers for over a decade. And so if you are someone who is in that overachieving category, you're constantly getting reassurance of, oh my gosh, you're doing so amazing, we value you, you're hearing all of the right things, but you're still terrified that you are going to lose your job and it's causing you to feel like that email you get at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday is just really terrifying, then listen up. Most people, really well-meaning, are going to tell you to focus in on soothing that fear and convincing yourself that you're not going to be fired, but it's not working, and so we need to take a different tact. And if there's anything that this massive round of layoffs should have taught to folks, it's that nobody is safe. That was really dark, but I'll probably keep it in. The fear of I will be fired is not nearly as much about the actual act of firing, but what happens after that, the ramifications for your life. And so I do this exercise with most of my private coaching clients that I call the van down by the river story. And it goes something like this. Let's say you are fired. What is the absolute worst thing, not necessarily the thing that you in this moment think is true, but the worst thing you can imagine happening? And a lot of times it's, well, then I am not going to be able to find another job. It's going to be this black mark and I'm not going to be able to be hired. And it's like, okay, well, then what? And a lot of times it ends up with the person is forever unemployable, has no job, runs out of money, and ends up unhoused on the streets. Which again, you're an overachiever who is being heaped with praise. The likelihood that you are going to not be able to find any job at all, and literally no one is going to support you, you're not going to be able to figure something out in order to bridge the gap until you have a job, is very, very, very unlikely. And I'm not saying that everyone is going to be able to snap their fingers and get a brand new job at the drop of a hat. And so then it is, all right, let's look at how much time do we have between losing the job and no longer being able to afford to cover basic expenses, and then comparing that to about how long do I think it could be before I found a job. Not necessarily your dream job, not even necessarily one that is paying literally the exact same amount, but something that could help to bridge that gap. One of the things that surprised me most working in the work stress career field, and in retrospect, it should not have surprised me. Okay, I will own this. Should not have surprised me, but it did, is the number of people that grew up in a place of financial lack. And one of the things that can happen is just this diffuse feeling of fear around the idea of finances, of money coming in, and it can cause people to completely avoid looking at their finances at all. We're talking going for months without looking at your bank statements. You have your bills on auto pay, and so you know that they're going to be covered, and you just aren't checking the charges, these sorts of things. And it can cause people to not have a great sense of how long could they actually be entirely unemployed without a drop of money coming in, and still be okay. And so an exercise that can be helpful for some of these folks is to look at your total amount of cash savings. I often have to tell these folks stocks are real money. Like, look at your stocks. In anything like that, if you want to look at what you have in your 401k as like I would rather dip into my 401k than be unhoused, then you can, but look at what you have and then compare that to, break it down into how many months could I be completely unemployed and still be able to have a roof over my head and food in my belly. If losing your job is going to cause immediate financial ruin, then that fear is not going to be able to go away, and figuring out how to start to create an emergency fund is not my wheelhouse. For the folks that I work with, they aren't typically the folks that are living paycheck to paycheck, and it sickens me how many people do have to live paycheck to paycheck. That is not my wheelhouse, but knowing how long could I be completely unemployed and still be okay, and do I feel like I could find at least some type of employment, not necessarily my dream job, but some type of employment to make sure that I don't go unhoused within that span of time is really valuable. And so having some sort of an emergency fund and being aware that you have the emergency fund can be very reassuring. And then you just keep breaking down those worst case scenario steps. Like, okay, well, let's say hypothetically you did get to that stage where you were approaching running out of money. Is it the case that you would just let it completely run out? No, you would probably go and get a different job. When I graduated college in 2009, it was the year after the big financial crash. And so yeah, I took my college degree and worked at a seasonal Toys R Us in a mall for a while, and then picked up a second job at Borders bookstore, which was across the hallway, for a short amount of time before I got my job at Google, because having some job was better than having no job. And no, I didn't like it, but it was the job that was available. Other things that can be helpful are thinking about folks that you have worked with in the past and had a really good working relationship with, peers, leaders, former managers who have moved to different parts of the org or different companies, and maybe thinking about shooting them a line, seeing if they want to grab a 30-minute e-coffee, just so that you know that if you do lose this job, you do have connections in another place, and frankly, maybe they know of an even better role that you might want to consider even now. And paying attention to the skills that you are building in this current role and have built over the years that would be transferable to other roles. So really starting to appreciate, wow, I bring a lot to the table, and you already have some ideas of how you would pitch yourself to future employers, or build something of your own if you were let go from this company. A cat walks on a fence with confidence not only because it has the audacity to believe that it will never fall off, but it knows that it will land on its feet if it does. And that is what we are doing here. We are taking the catastrophic story of, if I do get fired, how am I going to land on my feet if that happens? If you like this video, be sure to give me a follow and let me know in the comments, what are some success stories you've seen from people being fired?